welcome to Deck Analysis and Testing. Today we're finally looking at the Winged Dragon of Ra. Ra is a god card, you probably already know that. You also probably know that it's very bad. Not only is it hard to summon, it also doesn't really do a whole lot on field, and it dies to a single back row. Until now, it still dies to one back row, but at least the deck is now consistent, and we've got the two other versions of Ra that actually do something on field. Let's have a look at the cards. First is, of course, the Winged Dragon of Ra. There are two versions. You probably need both of them in your deck because you will be summoning both usually. The regular Winged Dragon of Ra has a couple of effects. It cannot be special summoned, it requires 3 attributes, and also when normal summoned, your opponent cannot activate any effects, and also you can pay a life point so that you have 100 left, and this card gains that amount of life points. And also you can pay 1,000 life points during your main phase to destroy a monster on field. You basically won't use any of these effects of Ra because you will be shitting it out, ignoring its summoning conditions, and also using it to summon the Immortal Phoenix. So actually you don't have to know any of these effects because you won't be normal summoning your Ra. And also it's not once per turn for the monster destroying effect, but also you probably won't use it anyway because Immortal Phoenix just has a better version of this effect. And speaking of Immortal Phoenix, this card can be special summoned with its own effect. When a Ra that you control gets sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. And also, you can pay 1,000 life points and send a monster on field to the graveyard. This effect does not target, that's why it is just a straight upgrade of the regular Ra's effect. It does not destroy, and it does not target, so it's really good at bypassing basically any sort of protection effects. This card is also unaffected by any effects, so it's really good even if your opponent has a lot of back row. As soon as this card hits the field, your opponent cannot do anything to deal with it. And also it has 4,000 attacks, so one attack from this card will pretty much win you the game on its own. That's why this card will be our main win condition. And also, once per turn during the end phase, you must send this card to the graveyard and then special summon a Sphere Mode from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And Sphere Mode is also a pretty good card. Sphere Mode can be normal summoned by attributing 3 monsters from either field, but you won't be normal summoning this card. You will only be using this effect to tribute your opponent's monsters in very, very specific scenarios, but usually you will be just summoning this using your Immortal Phoenix. This card cannot attack, and also your opponent cannot target this card for attacks or by card effects. This effect is really good. Basically, if you go first, you will be ending your turn with a Sphere Mode on field, and your opponent will have a really hard time getting rid of it because it kind of has the same protection as a Lunar Light Saber Dancer, and you all probably know how difficult that card is to deal with back in the day, even though there are a lot of non-targeting effects now compared to back then, so this card is still not that invincible as it would have been. It's still a pretty good effect to have, and some decks still do not have an out to this sort of protection. And also you can tribute this card to special summon a Winged Dragon of Ra from your hand or deck and ignore its summoning conditions, and its attack and defense becomes 4,000, so even if you don't normal summon your Ra, you still get the attack boost. Next is 3 copies of this Pendulum monster. This is a free to obtain super rare card that we recently got in the new event. As long as you don't play any cards in your extra deck, which you can see we're not, you can basically use this effect to draw a card for free. It's basically like Upstart Goblin if you play Master Duel. And it is once per turn, so if you have multiple copies of this card in your hand, you can only use them one at a time. But it's pretty nice to just thin your deck, especially in this free-to-play version where we don't play multiple copies of Millennium Revelation. You can use the effect of your Pendulum monster to help you thin your deck and draw into the cards that you hopefully want. For the spells and traps, we're playing 1 Reborn because our cards need them. It is for lore reasons, and a lot of Winged Dragon of Ra support cards also require you to play Reborn. That's why we must play a copy of this card. And a Millennium Revelation is the card that we will be using to search our Reborn. It can search a Reborn by discarding a Divine Beast monster from your hand to the graveyard, and also it has a second effect to send this card from your field to the graveyard, and it allows you to use the Reborn to reborn a Ra in the turn that it's sent. And it is not once per turn, so if you use your Reborn to reborn your Ra and then grab it back with your skill, you can reborn a second copy of Ra in the same turn. And this also bypasses the restriction of Ra being not able to be special summoned, and it's your main way to summon your Ra to your field. Next is 3 copies of Spiritualism, because as I mentioned in the intro, this deck does die to 1 back row, so having back row removal is really important, and Spiritualism just so happens to be the best free to obtain back row removal we have in the game. Next is the True Sun God. This card is our main searcher. It searches basically anything. When this card is activated, you can add Winged Dragon of Ra or any card that mentions it from your deck to your hand, and also once per turn, during your main phase, you can send this card to the graveyard or a Immortal Phoenix from your deck to the graveyard, and then send the regular Ra from your field to the graveyard. This is your main way of summoning your Immortal Phoenix, because this card needs your Ra to be sent from the field. So you will be using this effect to send the Immortal Phoenix to your graveyard, and then send your Ra, and then immediately trigger the effect of Phoenix to revive it from the graveyard and go for game. Next is 2 copies of Sun God Unification. You pretty much only need 1. I'm just playing 2 because we have 1 slot left, but usually you will be playing more copies of Millennium Revelation or something else instead. This card basically gives your Ra the anime effects of using your life points to boost its attack even when it's special summoned, because you will be cheating out Ra without using the normal summoning methods. You won't gain its effect of paying your life points to boost its attack when it is normal summoned. So instead, you can use the effect of this trap to, once per turn, pay life points so that you have 100 left, and then boost your Ra's attack by the amount that you paid. And also, once per turn, you can attribute a Ra that you control, and then you gain life points equal to the attack of that monster. And also, because of how this card works with Sphere Mode, you can have a Ra that has way more than 4,000 attack, because Sphere Mode gives it 4,000 attack, and then you can use your trap, assuming that you start with 4,000 life points, you can give your 4k Ra an additional 3,900 attack, and that gives your Ra enough attack to basically beat over everything and deal enough damage for lethal. It is 7,900 attack worth of damage, which is quite nuts. So that is your second way of dealing lethal damage, other than to use Immortal Phoenix. And in case you don't have a way to make your Immortal Phoenix, or if it's like banished or something, you can just use your normal Ra with the trap to actually just deal enough damage with a single hit. And finally is second trap, Dark Spell Regeneration. It has an on-field effect that we will never use. We are only going to use its graveyard effect to send a monster reborn from your hand or field to the graveyard to special summon a Ra from your graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions, and also it gets sent to the graveyard during your end phase, same with Millennium Revelation. This effect is a quick effect because it is a trap card, so you can use this revive effect during your opponent's turn, and this is a pretty good way to actually summon your Immortal Phoenix during your opponent's turn, because Immortal Phoenix sends itself to the graveyard in the end phase, so if you make Immortal Phoenix in your own turn, it will get sent to the graveyard so that it doesn't stay on the field during your opponent's turn. But if you make your Ra in your opponent's turn with something like your Dark Spell Regeneration, and then that Ra gets sent, you can immediately summon the Immortal Phoenix. And this card is even better than Sphere Mode if you have it on field in your opponent's turn, because this card is just straight up not affected by any card effects, not just those that target it. And it also has a ton of defense, so it's a really good way to block your opponent's attacks if you go first, assuming that you have a way to get this card plus a normal Winged Dragon of Ra to your graveyard. So this is the expensive version, and as you can see, it's pretty much the same deck. We're still not playing an extra deck because we will never use our extra deck. And we're just playing more copies of both Immortal Phoenix and Sphere Mode because having more copies of those cards are really nice. There are also Divine Beast monsters for your Millennium Revelation 2 pitch, so having more of them is always nice. We're also playing Eccentric in this deck instead of regular back row removal like MST. For a reason is that it is a monster, because you don't actually use your normal summon in this deck. You can use your normal summon on Eccentric to trigger its monster effect. You can tribute this card on field and then pop a monster on your opponent's side of the field. That gets rid of your opponent's monster interactions, so if your opponent has some kind of quick effect on a monster, you can use Eccentric to stop it, or you can set it as a pendulum scale to pop your opponent's back row if you want to do that. So it's the flexibility that is the reason that people use this card in Ra decks, and it's just really nice because you don't need your normal summon anyway. And for the other cards, we're just playing more copies of Millennium Revelation because this card is your main way of actually summoning your Ra, so having more copies is always nice. And we're only playing one copy of Unification because we don't need that many Unifications if we don't need to. Okay, let's have a look at the replays. This deck is one of those decks that really loves going second. So as you can see, we are going second in this game, which is really nice for our deck. We don't really have much to do to going first, even though we kinda can make Sphere and pass. It's still not very good. Your opponent can still get rid of it with a whole lot of non-targeting effects, so it's always nice if we get to go second. Our opponent unfortunately has a life point boosting effect, so we won't be able to OTK this turn. We will first bounce back one of his back row with our Spiritualism, and then use the True Sun God to grab ourselves a card, and then use the Millennium Revelation to grab Monster Reborn after we use our skill to grab ourselves a Ra. We will use the Revelation to allow us to actually reborn our Ra, ignoring its summoning conditions, but before that we are going to set our trap. This is for a very important reason, is that if our opponent tries to do anything to our Ra, we can still at least use our trap and tribute it if we need to, but we don't need to in this scenario. We can use the effect of the True Sun God to send the Immortal Phoenix to the graveyard and immediately summon it back. We can send our opponent's entire field to the graveyard by paying 1,000 life points, and then we can attack for 4k, which is not enough. But it's fine, we can still at least make Sphere Mode and hope that our opponent doesn't have an out. And by the looks of things, I don't think Starry Nights have an out to discard, after he realizes that he can't target my Sphere Mode and also can't attack my Sphere Mode. He will be scooping. Okay, in our second game, we are going first. Let's see what we can do. Of course, this is not preferable, but it's always nice to have a replay showing what this deck could do when you go first, because, you know, half of the games you will be going first. So in this case, we're doing the exact same thing as when we go second. We're still making Immortal Phoenix the same way we do going second, but instead of going for game, we're just gonna end turn and then summon a Sphere Mode during the end phase. We're still going to use the True Sun God to send the Immortal Phoenix to the graveyard and then immediately revive it, and then we're going to end turn and then summon the Sphere Mode, but unfortunately we have it in our hand, so we can't summon it from the deck. But that should be fine. Our opponent is playing Shadows, and he is going to make Winder. But that does not out our Sphere Mode. He is going to use his Shadow effects to send cards and pop my spell, which is okay. And he's going to end turn because he can't actually attack my Sphere Mode. And during our own turn, we can make our Ra, but we can't actually make our Phoenix because our opponent has a Winder, and we can't pop the Winder because our Ra destroys, and our Winder cannot be destroyed by card effects. So we can't actually make our Immortal Phoenix under our opponent's Winder, but there is something that we can still do in this situation because we haven't used the skill yet. We can use the skill to grab the True Sun God that he just popped and add the trap. Now the trap is going to do a lot of work here. it is going to allow us to pay a whole bunch of life points and then make our monster 7900 attack and just attack that opponent's Alistair and win the game. Okay, let's have a look at the expensive version of this deck. It basically works the exact same way, but we just have more copies of everything, so we don't run out of resources that quickly. Our opponent is playing 10 Ys, which is okay, but that does mean that he is probably going to gain a whole lot of life points and prevent us from dealing enough damage for lethal with only our Immortal Phoenix. But we can still probably clear his board because Immortal Phoenix does not target, so it gets around his Fire Tenyi, and also it does not destroy, so it gets around his Water Tenyi. And the Green Tenyi is fine because we won't have to attack any of his monsters, so we pretty much have an out to his entire board, which is quite nice. Our opponent pretty much uses the entire hand to make the board that they have, and we know that this card is the Ultra Rare Tenyi, so I'm feeling pretty confident. We're gonna use our Revelation, and before we use the effect, we're gonna use the skill to grab ourselves the trap, and then we're going to use our Reborn to get back the Winged Dragon of Ra. We don't have to set the trap yet because our opponent doesn't have any back row, so we don't have to immediately activate our trap. But we will set it now, and then we're going to make our Immortal Phoenix to actually start sending his stuff to the graveyard. Going to attack for 4k, which is not enough because he gained the life points, but it's fine, we can still at least make Sphere and pass turn. Our opponent will be making his Monk of the Tenyi, but the thing about Tenyis is that all of their stuff targets. So he does not have an out to Sphere mode, which is funny. He's going to make Adhara and then use Ashana to make Vishuddha, which is okay. He's going to make Baxia, shuffle back my back row, and use Vishuddha, only to realize that he can't actually target my Sphere mode. And then he grabs back his Ashuna, and then he's going to make the Link 2, and then use the Link 2 to revive the Link 3, and then he tries to go to battle, and he actually can go to battle because I think it's because the field spell lets him be unaffected by my Sphere mode's attack lock, I think, and that's why he can attack. But that's fine, we still aren't dead yet, so we could still at least use the second copy of Millennium Revelation to give us access to second Winged Dragon of Ra. We're going to use the Unification just to pay a bit of life points and then tribute Ra, so that we can bring back the Immortal Phoenix and then just attack for lethal. Good game.